In the heart of Germany, where the rolling hills are cloaked in mist and the dense dark forest conceals secrets older than time itself, the legends of menacing wolves and shape-shifting beings are whispered from one generation to the next, their stories woven into the folklore that inspired the Grimm's timeless fairy tales. But unlike the innocent tales of noble heroes and beautiful princesses, some stories hide a darkness so tangible that soldiers and locals alike have sworn to witness it firsthand, for it was in such a remote region of East Germany during the 1980s, amid the tension of the Cold War, that Cadet Adolf Schaefer of the Bundeswehr first encountered terror that would leave an indelible mark upon his mind, a presence that defied reason and logic, for it was not merely the rustle of wind through trees or the distant call of nocturnal animals, but something deliberate, something with intent. As he and 3 fellow cadets were dispatched late one evening to inspect the failing backup generators in the basement of a military installation, and upon arrival, Schaefer's flashlight revealed deep claw marks gouged into the metal casing of the main generator. Scratches so precise and unnaturally strong that no human or common animal could have inflicted them. The cords severed, the batteries shredded, as if a predatory intelligence had tested the limits of their machinery with malicious precision. And though he raced to alert his drill sergeant, the response was frustratingly mundane. A note to base command, a guard posted, and a replacement generator ordered. Yet the unease lingered, a gnawing sense that something beyond comprehension had been present. For hours later, as Schaefer attempted to sleep in the barracks, strange scratching noises echoed unnervingly close, seemingly inside the room itself. And when he opened his eyes, a pale gray figure with razor-sharp claws, a grotesque face devoid of a nose, and towering over him by at least 2 feet, stared back, its eyes unblinking, its form alien yet vaguely humanoid, freezing him in a terror that warped time, minutes stretching into eternity until he finally blacked out, awakening hours later drained of energy, yet unable to rationalize what he had seen. For it bore all the hallmarks of the Owl Hooker, a malevolent entity from German folklore capable of shape-shifting, sometimes assuming the form of a wolf, a woman, or a corpse-like ghoul, creatures whose legends claim they prey on the unwary, leaping onto their victims' backs to drain them of vitality, punish wrongdoers, or simply sow fear. And as Schaefer recounted his story to paranormal scholars decades later, it became clear that this was no isolated incident. For other military personnel stationed across Germany had reported similar encounters with beings whose forms shifted, whose motives remained inscrutable, whose presence blurred the line between myth and reality. And as the cold shadows of the forest stretched across the land, the whispers of werewolves, skinwalkers, and owl hookers carried on the wind, reminding those who dared to venture into the night that some stories told to children were not just tales, but warnings, the forests themselves alive with the echo of ancient and inescapable terrors, leaving even the bravest soldiers to question whether the darkness was merely absence of light, or the active presence of something far more sinister, something watching, waiting, and hungry. The night stretched endlessly over the military training grounds of West Germany in the early 1980s, a time when the Cold War simmered dangerously, and every soldier was trained for the possibility of all-out conflict. Yet for Private Francis, stationed near Detmold, the anticipated threat of Soviet aggression was eclipsed by a far stranger, more personal terror. For during a routine night exercise involving the establishment of an HLZ, a helicopter landing zone, he and a fellow soldier were alone in an open field, the silence of the countryside broken only by the occasional churning of helicopter blades cutting through the cool night air. And as they completed their preparations under the luminous gaze of a full moon, a movement at the tree line caught their attention. A figure standing upright, impossibly tall, its body shimmering in the moonlight, eyes glowing a yellow so unnatural that it seemed to pierce into their very souls. And although it made no sound, the mere presence of this being ignited a primal fear, a recognition that what they faced was not human, nor any known animal of the region. For as they observed it, the figure suddenly dropped to all fours, its form morphing fluidly, the appearance of a wolf but with dimensions and speed far beyond natural limits. Its sinewy muscles rippling beneath a coat that seemed to almost glimmer with an otherworldly sheen. And as it advanced, Francis fumbled for his sidearm but froze, the sheer audacity of the creature. Leaving him paralyzed, his companion equally transfixed. The wolf-like entity moving with purpose, yet stopping just before the tree-line, its form momentarily freezing, as if measuring their courage, and then retreating into the forest as silently as it had appeared, leaving the two men shaken to their cores, their hearts pounding in rhythm with the nocturnal chorus of insects, their breaths visible in the cold night air. And as they hastily packed up their gear and drove away at breakneck speed, neither spoke a word, knowing that recounting the encounter would invite ridicule or disbelief. Yet both carried an unshakable certainty of what they had seen, a certainty that gnawed at them, a lingering dread that no training could ever erase. And as Francis later reflected, even amidst the countless exercises, drills, and the constant presence of modern weaponry designed for human adversaries, there was an inescapable knowledge that some threats could not be measured, contained, or countered, for the creature had existed outside the rules of nature. And in the weeks and months that followed, the memory of the night stag haunted his thoughts, its eyes bright in the darkness, its silent gaze questioning their every move, leaving him to wonder whether the forests of Germany, long steeped in tales of werewolves, owl-hookers, and restless spirits, harbored entities whose power and intent transcended folklore, who watched not only soldiers, but all who dared to venture into the shadowed woodlands, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal themselves once more. And as he recounted his story decades later, Francis's voice carried a mixture of awe and terror, for in the quiet moments of reflection, he understood that the night stag was not merely a figment of imagination, nor a prank play by nature, but a being whose existence challenged every assumption about the natural world, a presence that existed both in myth and in terrifying reality, whose memory would forever intertwine with the cold winds, the rustling leaves, and the moonlit fields of Germany poised between peace and the threat of nuclear annihilation. A night that tested courage in ways no manual or drill could ever prepare a soldier for, leaving an indelible mark on the psyche, a reminder that some darknesses are eternal and some creatures, no matter how fantastical, are all too real. Deep in the forests of Brandenburg, not far from Berlin, where the trees grow thick and the underbrush conceals every step, the Rohr family's morning walk began like any other, the crisp air and winding paths of familiar comfort. Yet on this day, something in the shadows disturbed the usual serenity, for their children, normally eager and fearless, clung nervously to their parents, eyes wide and unblinking, sensing an unseen presence. And as they ventured further into the dense canopy, Stefan noticed a tension in the air, a stillness that made every rustle and whisper of leaves sound amplified, unnatural, until his wife froze abruptly, pointing toward the trees, insisting that someone, or something, was watching them. And as he strained to see, a massive figure crouched among the foliage came into view, its head and shoulders draped in what appeared to be the pelt of a wolf. The creature's size and shape almost impossibly large, a grotesque fusion of man and beast that seemed to belong to another time, another reality. And when a stick snapped under Stefan's foot, the figure turned, revealing eyes of bright, unnatural yellow that glimmered with intelligence and malice. And in an instant, the wolf skin over its head began to ripple and expand, enveloping its entire body in a terrifying metamorphosis, shifting from a humanoid form into a full, massive wolf that moved with unnatural speed and precision, muscles coiling like springs, fur glistening under the morning light. As it charged, its intent unmistakable, the family frozen with terror, yet instinctively retreating as Stefan hurled a hunting knife, the weapon barely grazing the creature, though it was enough to make it pause and retreat deeper into the forest, leaving the family shaken, hearts pounding, breaths ragged. Yet alive, the memory of the encounter seared into their minds. And when Lee Brickley, the British paranormal investigator, later examined the site, he discovered the knife abandoned and stained with a dark, dried substance that laboratory tests would reveal to be DNA, neither human nor from any known German fauna. Closest to the Siberian gray wolf, yet undeniably distinct, a chilling proof that some creatures exist at the intersection of folklore and reality. And as the Rohr family recounted the incident, Brickley noted the patterns echoed stories from military personnel and local legends. Tales of shape-shifting entities that stalked the forests, preying on those who ventured, alone or unprepared. Creatures known to the Germans as Allhookers, to the Kurai of Poland as skinwalkers, and to Native American lore as malevolent entities capable of taking the forms of animals or humans, all sharing a common thread. They wait, patient and intelligent, lying in wait for the unwary. Their presence is silent testament to the enduring darkness that lurks behind centuries of fairy tales and warnings, proving that beneath the veneer of civilization, in the shadows of the natural world, some forces remain untamed, inexplicable, and terrifying, and that even the bravest, whether soldiers or civilians, cannot escape the primal fear instilled by eyes that watch, claws that scratch, and forms that shift impossibly between the known and the monstrous. A reminder that the forests of Europe, long the setting for stories of witches, wolves, and malevolent spirits, may yet conceal truths far more sinister than any fable, waiting for the moment when curiosity or duty forces men, women, or children to step into the domain of beings who are not bound by human rules, whose motives remain unknowable, and whose presence continues to blur the line between myth, nightmare, and the cold, terrifying reality that some darknesses, once glimpsed, never fully leave the mind. In the remote regions of Germany, where centuries-old forests stretch endlessly and fog rolls in like living shadows, the legends of malevolent, shape-shifting creatures are not merely stories told to children, but warnings whispered by those who have glimpsed something far beyond comprehension. And it was here that Sergeant Adolf Schaefer's terrifying encounter would take place, a night that revealed the existence of the Allhooker, a creature as cunning as it was cruel, whose history is entwined with the folklore of the land, from vampiric black wolves walking on hind legs to seductive female forms luring the unsuspecting into darkness. For the Allhooker is a predator that transcends ordinary understanding, capable of perceiving the moral character of its victims and delivering judgment. And on that fateful night, Schaefer had returned from inspecting the vandalized military generator, still shaken by the inexplicable claw marks gouged into the metal casing, only to find that, as he settled into his bunk, the scratching noises resumed, louder, closer, almost sentient, and as he opened his eyes, he saw it, a gaunt figure, taller than any man he had ever known, gray and corpse-like, claws glinting like razor blades in the dim light, staring with an intensity that froze him in place, seconds stretching into what felt like hours, his mind unable to comprehend the reality of the being before him. And then, as if sensing his terror, the Allhooker leapt with impossible agility, landing just inches from his bed, the air around it charged with a malevolent energy that drained him of all strength, leaving him paralyzed and utterly powerless, a sensation that lingered for days, a reminder that the encounter was no mere dream, but a confrontation with a force older and wiser than humanity, a force that had traversed centuries of European lore, from the werewolf of Andak to the white wolf of the Harz Mountains, and now had made itself known in the sterile halls of a modern military base, defying logic, science, and reason. And when Schaefer recounted the experience to paranormal scholars years later, he spoke not only of fear but of awe. For the Allhooker is not a mindless predator, but a cunning and intelligent entity, capable of morphing its appearance, striking fear into the hearts of men, and disappearing as silently as it came, leaving behind only clawed destruction and lingering dread. And as stories like Schaefer's intersect with accounts from soldiers like Francis in West Germany, and civilians like the Rohr family near Berlin, patterns emerge that hint at a broader, more disturbing truth. That these creatures, whether called owl hookers, skinwalkers, or shapeshifters, share a common intelligence, a malevolent sentience, and a presence that transcends borders and cultures. A chilling reminder that the forests and shadows of Europe are not merely scenic landscapes, but territories patrolled by beings that exist outside human understanding, beings that lie in wait, strike with precision, and vanish, leaving only fear and inexplicable evidence in their wake. And as modern science struggles to classify the DNA of such encounters, as in the case of a knife recovered from the Ruhr forest, it becomes evident that humanity's grasp on reality is fragile, and the creatures that once populated the myths of children are very real, very present, and infinitely more dangerous than any human adversary, and those who encounter them are left with an enduring terror, a sense that the world is far stranger and darker than the sanitized stories of fairy tales and history books would have us believe, and that some night, some shadow, somewhere in Germany, the owl hooker waits again, ready to remind the living that the veil between myth and reality is thinner than anyone dares to imagine. Beyond the forests of Germany, into the wilds of Poland, the legends of shape-shifting entities continue, whispered among the Kurai people, who speak of skinwalkers descending from the stars, beings that have existed for millennia, bridging worlds, and now crossing into human settlements to stalk the forests and shadowed pathways. And it was in late 2020 that British author and paranormal investigator Lee Brickley met Stephen Rohr, a man whose family had endured a terrifying encounter where, during a morning walk in the Rahan forest, the children recoiled, sensing an unnatural presence, their normally joyful energy replaced by unexplainable fear. And when Stephen and his wife looked closer, they saw a massive figure crouched, draped in the pelt of a wolf, impossibly tall, glowing yellow eyes fixed on them, a humanoid transforming seamlessly into a wolf with unearthly speed. The hunting knife Stephen threw barely deterring it, yet leaving behind chilling traces of dried blood on its blade that would later baffle DNA analysts, as the sample did not match any known German animal, closest to a Siberian gray wolf, but fundamentally different. And as Brickley documented, these encounters were far from isolated. Locals and soldiers alike reported beings that could perceive human intent, morphing into wolves, women, or corpse-like entities, always lying in wait, striking fear into anyone who wandered too far from civilization. And in conversations with Elsa, the sister of a local Kurai man, Brickley learned that the forests of Poland acted as a portal, a liminal space allowing these creatures to move freely into the human world, a connection mirrored in American lore with the infamous Skinwalker Ranch, suggesting a shared reality across continents, where myths converge with terrifying possibility. And as Brickley pieced together the histories, he found repeated patterns: attacks near bridges, cemeteries, forests, and isolated fields, each story echoing the owl hooker of German legend, the skinwalkers of Native American culture, and even European werewolf myths, demonstrating that across time and space, these entities have haunted humans with the same relentless cunning, and despite advances in technology and military vigilance, their presence persists, undetected yet omnipresent, leaving only partial evidence: a slash on a generator, claw marks in a barn, a brief glimpse of yellow eyes in the mist, that suggests the world is far more interconnected with forces we cannot fully comprehend. And for those like Stefan, Schaefer, and Francis, encounters with such beings serve as chilling reminders that human courage and modern weaponry offer little protection against entities that have learned to exist in the spaces between myth and reality, that observe, judge, and act with an intelligence that transcends understanding. And as the forests across Germany and Poland remain dark and silent to the untrained eye, those attuned to the signs understand that something ancient, cunning, and malevolent continues to move just beyond sight, reminding all who wander that not every shadow is innocent, that some eyes watching from the trees belong to beings older than civilization itself, lying in wait, hungry, and infinitely patient, ready to strike when the veil thins and the unwary step too far into their domain. A domain where folklore is not fiction, but a warning encoded in the landscape. The perfect camouflage for beings whose very existence challenges everything humanity thinks it knows about the natural world. The terrifying encounters of soldiers and civilians alike hint at a truth far older than any modern documentation, a legacy woven deep into the folklore of Germany, Poland, and beyond, where creatures like the owl hooker and the skinwalker transcend centuries and cultures, existing simultaneously in myth and reality. And for Lee Brickley, investigating these phenomena revealed startling patterns connecting the dark forests of Europe to Native American legends of malevolent shapeshifters, beings capable of assuming the forms of wolves, humans, and even ethereal corpses, stalking their victims with calculated intent. And for those like Sergeant Schaefer, Private Francis, and Stephen Rohr, their first-hand experiences provided a harrowing glimpse into this hidden world. Whether encountering clawed marks on generators in isolated military bases, witnessing a 7-foot-tall humanoid shift into a massive wolf, or fleeing a creature that seemed to anticipate their every move, leaving behind traces of DNA unlike any known animal, suggesting a presence that defies conventional scientific understanding. And as Brickley delved deeper into the Rahan forest and the Polish wilderness, guided by the Karai people, he discovered that these entities were far more than local legends. They were part of a global web of shape-shifting predators, existing in liminal spaces, crossing borders, and waiting patiently for human intrusion, their motives inscrutable, yet terrifyingly deliberate. And the stories consistently reveal their intelligence, awareness of human morality, and ability to exploit fear, for they seem to test, judge, and punish those who wander alone or act carelessly, a pattern mirrored across continents in the Navajo, Hopi, and other indigenous cultures, where skinwalkers, rakes, and pale crawlers serve as reminders of humanity's vulnerability. And while folklore often imbues these beings with supernatural or moralistic qualities, the evidence collected, clawed generators, eyewitness accounts, anomalous DNA, suggests that the world's forests, hills, and shadowed landscapes may harbor predators that straddle the line between myth and biological reality. And as Brickley compiled his findings, it became evident that human perception alone is insufficient to comprehend the scope and sophistication of these entities, for they operate in dimensions and patterns invisible to most, revealing themselves only in fleeting glimpses or in moments of acute vulnerability, leaving those who survive with a lingering awareness of the precariousness of life and the realization that civilization, technology, and courage offer little protection against creatures that have perfected the art of patience, stealth, and psychological domination, a truth that resonates across all cultures touched by such myths, and one that challenges humanity to reconsider its understanding of nature, the supernatural, and the thin boundary that separates the two. For in the forests and hills of Germany and Poland, as in the deserts and plains of the Americas, the owl hooker, the skinwalker, and their kin continue to watch, wait, and lie in darkness, a haunting testament to a world far stranger, older, and more dangerous than any history book or fairy tale has ever admitted. And for those who encounter them, the memory lingers, a visceral reminder that some shadows are alive, some eyes are always watching, and some predators never truly sleep. As the centuries-old forests of Germany and Poland stretch into shadow and mist, their dark canopy concealing every secret, it becomes increasingly clear that the creatures encountered by soldiers, families, and investigators are part of a hidden ecosystem of malevolent intelligence, entities that have eluded human understanding for millennia, and whose presence has been encoded into folklore, myth, and fairy tales for generations. The owl hooker, the skinwalker, and other shape-shifting predators are not bound by the limitations of ordinary animals, capable of perceiving intent, morphing between human, wolf, and corpse-like forms, and striking with precision against the unwary. Their appearances chronicled in stories from the Cold War era to modern-day accounts, as in the terrifying experiences of Cadet Adolf Schaefer with clawed generators, Private Francis and the Night Stag in West Germany, and Stefan Rohr's family in the Rahan Forest, where DNA evidence defied classification and indicated an existence beyond known species, a reality that both challenges science and confirms the persistence of ancient lore. And as British investigator Lee Brickley traced these encounters across borders, cultures, and centuries, he uncovered startling commonalities. These beings lie in wait near bridges, cemeteries, forest paths, and isolated clearings. They exploit human fear, and they are patient, cunning, and unpredictable, a terrifying combination that transcends national and cultural boundaries, suggesting that what has long been dismissed as myth may be an intricate layer of reality, a shadow world intersecting with our own, where the laws of biology, physics, and morality are fluid, and where human intrusion is often met with subtle observation or violent retribution. And as the Rohr family and countless other witnesses recount their stories, a pattern emerges, linking the European owl hooker to Native American skinwalkers and similar entities across the globe, creating a web of shape-shifting predators that is at once local and universal, a shared consciousness of fear, predation, and stealth that has survived through oral history, legend, and first-hand experience. And while the world continues to expand its knowledge through technology, DNA analysis, and military observation, the veil between these creatures' realm and humanity remains thin, permeable, and frighteningly real. And for those who have encountered them, the memory endures like a living shadow, an eternal reminder that some darknesses cannot be rationalized or escaped, that some predators do not conform to human expectation, and that even as civilization claims dominion over forests and fields, these ancient, intelligent beings continue to exist patiently, silently, and lethally, waiting for the moment when the unwary step too far into the territory of myths made flesh, reminding us that the world is far stranger, darker, and more alive than any story ever told, that legends of wolves, demons, and skinwalkers were never merely cautionary tales, and that the forests themselves are watching, always watching, with eyes that never blink and minds that never rest.